Hello Maniacs! Our big bird is assembled. Not without problems, but everything has ended fine. Now it's time to turn this thing into this thing. How to do it? I am Mateusz, aka Scale Modeler by accident, and let's find it out! As I mentioned in the inbox review, the link in the right upper corner, I want to build this bird in painting from southern France in spring 1944. I will use Mr. Hobby's paints H57, H64 and H65 with my favorite proven Mr. Leveling Thinner. These paints match RLM 65, RLM 71 and RLM 70. I decided to stay with a larger 0.4mm airbrushes nozzle for painting large surfaces on the model. It allows for painting with 2 instead of 3 or more layers of paints. What's worth mentioning, the bigger nozzle, the less thinner is required because thicker paint goes through for better coverage. Using a 0.2mm nozzle, I thin the paint at least in 1:1 ratio. With the bigger one, about 30-35% of thinner is fine. Here you may see how easily as bright as hellblau color with worse covering properties sits nicely on the surface. Once it dried up, I could start masking. Yeah, have I mentioned I finished postgraduate project management and I try to be time efficient, even with masking the model. To put the whole painting in time frames, it's important to mention how long each layer of paint should dry at the model. When you paint smaller parts with acrylics, they are dry after a couple of minutes. Sometimes it's nearly immediate drying. Nevertheless, when you paint large surfaces with thick layers to achieve the best coverage, you can't just go further right after putting the paint. Acrylics have something like an initial drying time and real drying time. The second one means when you can't touch the paint without leaving fingerprints or put some masking tape on. Right now, the initial drying time is about 2 minutes. The paint sits stable with no shifts, but it will take at least 24 hours until it should be enough hard to further work. Of course, the drying time of acrylics depends on many factors. The type of the paint, how much paint you have put on the surface, how much thinner has been added, room temperature, humidity, etc. In my case, I was leaving the model to dry for 2 days before switching colors. The final result was satisfying. Now it's time to get complicated in my life. The scheme I choose to build has standard German camo for bombers with random patterns. How random? Very. Even the ICM gave up with its exact placement. I was trying to figure out how to apply a bright RLM 65 on the dark surface. Applying RLM 71 on the brighter lower part of the model will be much easier, but my first attempts at freehand airbrushing weren't promising. I also was trying to mask the model with Patafix adhesive, which is flexible and allows to create random shapes, but quickly I realized I'd have to use at least 2 packages of this thing. I started with switching the airbrush's nozzle for a smaller one, 0.2mm. Then I commenced thinning down the paint, which I had in an older jar. The first attempts gave me hope that the thinning ratio of about 60% of thinner and 40% of paint will be enough. Unfortunately, it quickly turned out that the paint is too thick, leaving misty marks on the edges. I had to add more thinner, lower a little bit of pressure, and the effect was acceptable. These patterns began appearing on German bombers serving in seaside units around 1943. As I observed in reference photos, they were mostly applied randomly in field conditions. Some planes carried coarse lines, harshly sprayed, some were painted more carefully. It means that Hans was spraying thick patterns, while Helmut was trying to do this more aesthetically. As I mentioned earlier, there wasn't any scheme for this pattern. Its placement and shape was depending on the person who was applying the paint, thus I was free to put it in my own way. You can decide in the comment section below if I was closer to Hans or Helmut. I decided to fix my first unsuccessful attempts of painting with highly diluted RLM70 that allowed me to sharpen the edges of the pattern and cover this ugly overspray mist. It wasn't anything uber important, but I feel better with this. Once the upper part was finished, I started to paint the lower part with RLM71. It was much easier because darker paints sits much easier on the brighter one, unlike applying the brighter on the darker one. In the end, I covered the whole model with a generous amount of gloss varnish to prepare it for decals. The paint was drying for 2 days for the comfort of further work. I didn't want any fingerprints and a sticky surface. Decals are nicely printed and thin. Unfortunately, there is a lot of carrier film. At this moment, I had very neutral feelings about them, but let's check how they work. Before, I would like to introduce you to my best friends for decal applications, Micro Set and Micro Sol liquids. It's hard to express how good these solutions are when we use them together. You can set decals on basically every type of surface and it doesn't matter if it's curved, rounded, flat, irregular, etc. Its application is easy. At first we put the blue one where the decal will be placed. Then no, I do not put the red one. I do this about an hour after when I'm sure decals are dry and they won't move. Speaking of which, I was positively surprised at how nice it is to work with them. Well done ICM, well done. Of course, my favorite decals are the Hasegawa's ones. I think they supply their models with the best decals, way better than for example cartographs, which are beautiful but too thick for me, even not mentioning the Tamiya's ones. I have also positive memories of working with Airfix's decals for their new kits and I'm very curious about your experience with decals. Please feel free to let me know in the comment section below. Once decals were on the model, I took microsol, which melts the remains of the carrier film and helps to conform the decal on the surface. Then it's good to leave our work for a couple of hours and let the magic happen. In case of some thicker decals or more complicated shapes, it's good to wait even longer so the decal could wrap around the surface and stick better. As you might have spotted, the model lost its canopy. I was anxious to calm down. The canopy decided not to take part in decal application and decided to peel off in some mysterious conditions. She's waiting safely for further work. In the end, I protected everything with a generous layer of gloss clear so I could weather this bad boy. Thank you for watching my friends and see you next week. Please subscribe to my channel and hit the bell icon next to the subscription button to be alerted when I publish the next episode. Soon you will see my Instagram account address where you can see the finished model. Please leave a like, feel free to comment below or share this video on social media because it helps my channel to grow and me to create more and more content. Many thanks for watching this video, stay safe, enjoy your hobby and see you next week.